Okay, so it's like spring of 2003, going in through June, and like everything kind of went nuts. Also, you're gonna hear dogs playing. I'm watching my ex's dog again, and they're both like going nuts tonight, which is cute, but also you're gonna hear that. So things just went nuts. It was like no breaks. Like every night something was happening, and again, not big things, but there were no breaks. It was like every night I heard somebody in my room. Every single night. Every single night I heard somebody running in the hallway. Every single night a doorknob was jingling. My youngest brother said that, you know, like he remembers this chunk of time because his door was constantly opening despite him shoving stuff under it. He meant like almost like once a week would wake up and run down the hallway to my parents' room and bang on their door screaming and ask them to open it up. Keep in mind at this point he's like 12. My other brother, when I talked with him about it, his memory was that he heard banging a lot in the basement, and he always attributed it to the water heater. But like our water heater didn't bang around. Like we had a newer water heater, not a very old house. Like it didn't bang around. So he remembers one instance specifically, like he was playing video games downstairs and he heard this loud like bang coming from my old room. He was like, oh, it's the water heater. So he kept playing, but then he heard it again and was like, well, if it is the water heater, maybe it's going to explode. I'm going to go upstairs. And I think like that's just an interesting kind of peek into how he kind of dealt with everything. Like I feel like me and my mom and my youngest brother would have been like, we get it, guys. Like you don't want us down here. We're out. Whereas, you know, John, who wasn't bothered as much, his thought process was kind of along the lines of like, oh, there's, it's got to be this thing. Even though this thing never happens and doesn't bang, and I'm closer to the water heater than the bangs I'm hearing. Just as an interesting insight. So around late May, there was one day, like when I didn't work, I would, typically if my mom wasn't like running out of the house doing stuff, my mom and I would just like walk around the house, solve the problems of the world, like just talk about everything and nothing. And I would literally just like follow her around like a little baby duck, like helping her with her chores just so we could keep chatting. And this was one of those days. I was helping her make her bed. And I should say, she was also getting bothered a bunch. My parents' bedroom door started opening a lot during this time on its own, like unlatching and fully opening. My mom, you know, with her insomnia was having a hard time sleeping anyway, but then now was like hearing stuff all the time, like in their room, in the hallway. She was constantly waking my dad up to be like, I hear a window breaking downstairs. I hear a door opening. I hear, you know, this door just opened. Our door just opened. Like, please wake up and make sure somebody's not in the hallway, like, you know, breaking into the house basically. So she was having a tough time. Anyway, we're making the bed and she says to me, she's like, oh, this actually reminds me, I was going to tell you about this. Something really weird happened last night. I was like, oh, yeah. She was like, the door opened and she was like, I felt that energy again, like come into the room. And I watched it walk down the foot of our bed and like over to my side of the bed and like stare at me. And I was like, stare at you? So you actually like saw it? She was like, no, I saw nothing. I heard it walk and I could feel it walk, but I didn't see anything, but I just felt like it was like standing right over me. And I just kind of looked up at it for a while. We like stared at each other. And she goes, and then it sat on my feet. And I was like, what? She was like, it sat on my feet. And she's like, it touched my feet. It freaked me out so bad. I like scooted my feet up underneath me. And then it like, I felt it like moving down the bed. Like it was like getting up and sitting, getting up and sitting. And I was like, well, did you get up and like look to see if like the sheets were actually moving? If there was anything happening on the bed, if like something, you know, we had had a cat in the past, but we didn't have a cat anymore. But I was like, maybe something, you know, like maybe we've got an infestation. I don't know. Did you like look to see if any of that happened? And she was like, no, I didn't. I was so freaked out that it touched my feet. I literally curled up in a ball, like freaked out and tried to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was like, oh. And so then she's continuing to make the bed and she starts tucking in the sheets. And I realized that's probably what happened. So I'm going to show you what I mean by tucking in the sheets. So, you know, when you're like tucking in the sheets and you're trying to like get them underneath the mattress down here. And so sometimes you like pick up the mattress to do it like this. Okay. That's probably the worst example I've ever given on this whole platform, but do you kind of see what I mean? Like when you're tucking the sheets in, you know, sometimes you'll touch the top of the bed. I was like, that's what they were doing, Mom. They were tucking your sheets in. Again, this was late May. And she was like, oh my gosh, I think you're right. So she hopped in bed and she was like, you do it. You do it and let me see like if that's what it felt like. So I did. I reenacted it for her and she was like, that was it. That was it. And I was like, that makes way more sense than somebody getting up and moving and sitting on their way down. So fast forward like about a month later, my mom is in Ireland with her mom on a vacation. And it was around her birthday. So this would be in June. And my dad and I, we planted a huge garden in the backyard for her while she was gone. It was like a total surprise. So I'm planning with my dad. We're talking about everything and nothing like my families want to do. My dad also experienced a bunch. So I remember us talking a little bit about that. And then he gets a phone call. The phone's outside with us. And he's very serious on the phone. Also very professional. So I know it's not a family member or a friend. My dad's got his big boy voice on. He hangs up and he is like gray. Like he doesn't look great. So I was like, Dad, what is that? What's going on? And he was like, your mom is going to be so upset if I tell you before we have all the information. And so I was like, well, guess what now, dude? You have to tell me, like, what is going on? And he said, well, your mom had a mammogram in May and the image was blurry. So they had her come back in right before she went to Ireland to make sure maybe she moved or something. He goes, but they saw something and it's gotten, you know, it's increased in size since her last mammogram. So she needs to get a biopsy scheduled when she gets